Hello and welcome to T2RL Talks Conference Special with me, Ian Tunnacliffe, and in the studio with me we have Westerman and Rasih Ustun. They are two of our senior consultants who work largely in the field of revenue management. And today we're going to be talking about the Revenue Management Market Report, which we are about to publish on t2rl.net. And really highlighting some of the conversations that we're going to be having at T2RL Engage in London in September. So good morning, as it is morning today, Dita and Rasih. And I'd like to get straight into it to say, is there such a thing as revenue management anymore as a separate discipline? Or is revenue management, dynamic pricing, and offer management all coming together into one great big commercial package? I'll start with Rasih. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they are definitely very much interconnected, Ian, as you mentioned. But if you look at in practice what's happening nowadays, right, as the airlines started moving into offer, is where revenue management is a more taking things from broader perspective, looking at the overall customer demand and optimizing the flights and inventory controls accordingly. With dynamic pricing coming in and adjusting the price recommendations tactically as and when the customer demand arrives. And all of this ties to offer management for sure, because the offer you present has the price, right? So they are very much interconnected and they are under the umbrella of offer management, I think.
Okay, Dieter, would you go along with that?
Yeah, and maybe I start a little bit more from the theoretical angle here. Revenue management, as it was traditionally done, is determining how many seats you put in a particular booking class, and each booking class has a set of fares or price points that are pre-filed. So in theory, what you're trying to do is you try to decide how many seats will I sell at a particular price. Now, when it comes to dynamic pricing, you swap the thing around and say, okay, this is the optimal price at which I would like to sell. And therefore, at least in the initial stages, when legacy channels are still present in booking classes, you will try to make the booking class availability reflecting that price. But in theory, even in the past, revenue management was trying to set a price in some way. In the future, dynamic pricing, optimal pricing will consist of a willingness to pay plus a marginal cost factor. And marginal cost factor in this way is what we call today bid prices, and will continue to come from that revenue management system for quite some time. So revenue management will, in the old way, will not disappear, but it will kind of merge with price optimization into one.
Okay, and one of the consequences of the developments in revenue management and dynamic pricing that we've seen in the last couple of years is a vast increase in the amount of data that RM systems are considering when they go to do their forecasts and optimizations. And there seems to be a consensus amongst the revenue management suppliers that means they're going to have to turn to artificial intelligence. Is that something you're seeing in the market? Is everybody turning to an AI model to move to the next level? Either one. Rasih, what do you think about AI?
Yes, I mean, it is an important area of research. When you look at a lot of whether it's the major vendors or airlines in-house development teams that are looking at enhancing their revenue management models, calculations, predictions, based on AI. So it is an important area of research that people are looking at. I mean, I can definitely say that, a lot of the major vendors and airline in-house teams are still relying on well-known statistical models and optimization models to do their core revenue management job. And they're trying to enhance it with AI and use the benefits that the AI can bring to this picture, right? And those are mainly in the area, as you mentioned, Ian, analyzing large data sets, understanding the patterns, changes that are happening much quicker than the traditional models, and helping airlines make somewhat more of a tactical decision about what would be the best decision in this particular context, right? So those are the main areas that AI are being experimented with and looking into bringing more benefits or fine-tuning the current existing revenue management models. Are they enough to replace entirely what we've been doing for the past 20 years or so? Probably not yet at this stage. They are promising good benefits, but I don't think we are there yet. It's not completely proven that AI models can take over when you look at our particular revenue management or dynamic pricing problem.
Okay, one of the big problems with AI, just generally, not even in the airline industry, but generally across the board, is that AI systems are taking decisions that the people who created them don't understand. They don't know how they got to that decision. So to my mind, for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a role for the skilled and experienced analyst to work alongside the AI to basically to sanity check the AI some of the time. Is that something that you're observing in the market, Dieter, or in the airlines you're working with?
Yeah, no, I fully agree, but that statement is not only true for AI. It's already true for some of the current models, like the logit models, that are very complex. The dynamic programming algorithms are very complex and very hard to follow by humans. Nevertheless, it's not right to leave a system unattended, even with well tested current methodology. And AI, as you bring that up, of course, there is no way around AI, as AI pops up everywhere. So it's very obvious that you have to check whether it's useful for this industry, and maybe in the future may replace current algorithms and even generate better results. At this point in time, we are not there yet, as Rasih was saying. They are not yet generating necessarily better results, but that doesn't mean they will not in the future. So I think there will be quite some time of parallel runs, attempts to use those, and maybe at some point, when it's proven it's better, then yes, for the reason that you brought up, that it can work with much, much more different type of data elements at the same time, they may replace traditional models.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes as an industry, and I think probably all industries do this, we go through fads, and we had a fad about a decade ago where blockchain was going to solve all our problems. And then we had a time when Internet of Things was going to solve all our problems. I get a feeling there's something of that with the current rush towards AI deployments. But intuitively, I feel that probably there is something solid behind AI or machine learning at least, that maybe there wasn't with some of those other things. And I think, Dieter, you put it, I think you put it the right way there. They're not yet ready to take over, and maybe they will be sometime in the future. But I think the role of the RM analyst is evolving as the systems evolve, and those people are doing much more strategic thinking now than they were maybe a couple of decades ago, when it was largely an arithmetical calculation that they were getting engaged in. I want to turn. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dieter.
I think the core issue right now is AI tries to predict something based on pattern observed, right? So it observes a lot of things and tries to determine some form of a pattern, and based on that, give an answer. We may not be at that point where we know how to analyze all the data that we have to get the right information out that reverts to a dynamic price, a willingness to pay, and these kind of things. That's, I think, where the learning and the development has to go. And then it could well be a good tool. Okay,
and that's the second time you've mentioned willingness to pay, and that is something I want to turn to, because there's potential for some interesting bumps in the road along the deployment of willingness to pay models, and certainly within the popular press and the social media sphere. People talk about willingness to pay models in very negative terms, as in this is just a way of airlines trying to extract the maximum money for the same product from different people just because one of them's got an iPhone and one of them's not got an iPhone or something like that. And I think there are some pitfalls there, the way that airlines not just deploy willingness to pay models, but also the way they talk about them. And I think it's very important that they talk about them in terms of the ability to provide the most valuable offer for each individual customer, if that's what you're going to talk about, rather than the ability to extract the maximum amount of money according to the characteristics of the customer. Are you seeing anything like this at the moment in willingness to pay models being deployed? I think one or two of the vendors say they have one and it's up and running. Either one. Dieter, you're a fan of willingness to pay.
Okay. So you made a very important point. And of course, this entire exercise to use willingness to pay, to go to continuous pricing, the airlines do that to increase their revenue. But that doesn't mean that the target is to increase the revenue from each individual transaction, right? It is more about getting the right price to the right customer at the right time, which we already said in revenue management like 20, 30 years ago. That's what we try to do. That means if I have a step price function and not a continuous function, sometimes I have to go in one step too far up and the price is too high for that particular customer and the customer goes totally away. In this new world, I can decide, okay, the willingness to pay of that customer is not the full step up, maybe only half step up. So I can now give them that half step up price offer and the consumer is willing to accept. So that increases revenue for the customer and gives them more for the airline and gives them more attractive offer to the customer.
And it gives the customer an offer that they are able and willing to accept, whereas without that, they maybe wouldn't be able to buy the flight or take the service at all.
Exactly. And that increases total revenue of the airline if you do this across multiple transactions, always. So it's a win-win.
And yet it potentially gives customers some better deals than they would have been able to obtain without those willingness to pay models.
Exactly. Yes.
I think the other important point here is whose and what's willingness to pay are we measuring, right? That's the other thing that, I mean, both airlines should, and vendors and other partners in the industry should be looking at doing some, measuring the willingness to pay versus the type of customers you're serving and the types of products you're offering to them. So if you generalize this and say, typically the willingness to pay of all of my economy customers are at this level, at this stage to departure, would not be an accurate estimate, I think. So you should be looking at, what is the willingness to pay of the customer to the specific products I'm offering to them. And these products, airlines today are defining via their fare filing, the fare filing rules. They're trying to segment the customers, and also the fare brands, the branded fares that have been quite popular in the past few years that they are offering. So if you take your willingness to pay measurement, modeling, etc., to the level that can measure the willingness to pay of specific types of customers versus specific types of products, you can actually give them this high value or the best deal type of offers, knowing that they would be interested, most likely purchasing the specific type of products from you, depending on their purpose of travel. So I think, expanding the willingness to pay into being sensitive to the type of customer and the product that you're offering to them is a key to the success as well. So that you're not measuring something that is looking at very broad aggregated data of all the customers you've served in the past 1 year or something like that.
And that kind of ties into something we looked at a couple of months ago when we started to survey the market for revenue management of ancillary services and bundles. And I think willingness to pay modeling is going to become a very significant factor in those optimizations, because when you go beyond just talking about a right to fly product and you start to build a bundle or add on some and even adding on third party elements, then you've got some very complex determinations to make about willingness to pay. You know, am I going to scare off my customer completely by trying to make him rent a limousine when all he really wants is the flight from A to B, and those kind of things, and the general complexity increases, and I guess that then circles around again to, oh well, let's throw an AI at this and see what it can make of it.
Yeah, but that's a very special level of complication when you add bundles, products, dynamic packaging, personalization, all this. A lot of this is today still in the air for all the vendors and all the airlines. It's theoretically nice, but there's a long way to go until the industry can really manage this.
I think that's absolutely true, and to a large extent, it's one of the big drivers for the adoption of the new paradigms around offer, order, settle, deliver, around, you know, permitting that level of complexity to even be serviced. It would be hard to even service those kind of offers in a world where you're restricted to PNRs and EMDs and four sector tickets and all the rest of it. So it brings us nicely really to thinking about the T2RL Engage conference in September, which is really structured this year around the implementation of modern retailing. I think we've gone past thinking, is it going to happen? And we're now thinking about how it's going to happen. So for Dieter and for Rasih, what for you will be the important subjects that we'll be discussing and feeding back to the industry in September around the areas of revenue management and pricing? Rasih.
I mean, definitely, you know, number one thing is what progress is being made. What has everybody observed in the past year since the last Engage, and what advancements have been made in the area of revenue management and dynamic pricing. Have we met the goals are we meeting the goals that we set like a year ago or a couple of years ago of creating dynamic offers with continuous pricing? You know, that's probably one of the top objectives of understanding where we are. And based on our learnings so far, what would be the ideal next step for us, or the set of next steps that we should take, right? So given the learnings, the pros and cons of whether it's continuous pricing or the experimentation with dynamic offers, etc., what is the next direction we should take in terms of improving the offers we are providing to the customers? And the other topic, I think, is where are we limited? Because PSS, the traditional booking ticketing systems are still limiting everybody, revenue accounting as well. And I think people are learning this more and more as they go into the area of dynamic offers. So given our limitations, what should we prioritize in terms of our transition? What is the best logical way? It can be different for each airline, but what would be the ideal transition path? Or should we adjust it now that we know what we know so far? Should we adjust it so that we can actually make more use or more benefit from the dynamic offer vision and dynamic pricing vision that we have at this stage?
Okay, I'd ask listeners to hold that thought for a little while, because in the near future we're going to have another podcast with some guests from ATPco, Tom Gregerson and Alex Oklin, who will be talking about exactly this, about transitional steps and how we move along the road and actually gain some value early in the piece. So Dieter, for you, what is there anything other than what Rasih has already highlighted that you're looking forward to in September?
Not necessarily others, but at least I would like to mention Rasih and I will do a workshop in particularly focusing on dynamic pricing and continuous pricing and the current implementations that we see with some airlines being present. So the near-term part of this entire OOSD transition is what we're going to cover. This is where a lot of dynamic is happening at the moment. That's why this is probably very interesting for everybody to listen to. How are they doing? Why are they doing? What exactly are they doing? Which vendors are involved, and so forth. So I think that will be a very interesting topic during the conference.
Okay. Thanks, Dieter. And if you're an airline employee listening to this and you're involved at all with revenue management or dynamic pricing, I would strongly encourage you to sign up for that workshop that Rasih and Dieter will be running on the first day of Engage in September. If you're not engaged in revenue management and dynamic pricing, there's still a lot to interest you in the T2RL Engage conference that's taking place in London in the shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral in September. And I will look forward to seeing as many of our listeners there as possible. But for right now, I'd like to thank Dieter, I'd like to thank Rasih, and I'd like to thank you for listening. And I look forward to talking to you again in the next issue of T2RL Talks.